This morning we really get to the core of the practice of Dujam Lingpa's approach to developing Shamata. So everything really before that we have done in this retreat has been preliminary to this practice, trying to develop some basic skills that are going to put us in a good position to succeed at this practice. So you could say that the breath meditation is the purpose of that in this approach is to calm the body, relax the body, and to calm the mind so that the turbulent flow of mental appearances that can be like standing under a waterfall is calmed to the point where you can work with individual appearances. And then we moved into especially the Dzogchen approach to mindfulness of breathing, where the point was really to develop the standalone skill of stillness and motion, beginning to recognize the difference between the stillness of awareness and the movement of the very simple motion of the breath, or the rhythm of the breath. And then yesterday, we entered the practice of awareness. And this is really preliminary to this practice in this presentation of Dujam Lingpa, because it just is very helpful to have a reference of stillness so that you can know the movement of these very alluring, complicated appearances that are appearing in your own mind, so that you can, in order to have simultaneous stillness and motion, you first of all have to have the reference of stillness to know that these appearances are in motion relative to the stillness of your awareness. So now we are well prepared to really enter the practice. So let's jump in. The practice that, the title that, or the name of the practice that Dujam Lingpa gives this is taking aspects of the mind as the path. Or in other places he calls it taking the impure mind as the path. So again, this is Shamata focused on conceptualization. All of the appearances that are arising within the configured mind. And this is the way that Dujam Lingpa describes it. And you have this on your chart, which I believe is available today. It's what? 4 modes of mindfulness. Yes. So that, thank you for doing that again. So that will be very helpful for you to refer to. And so this will be, today we are going to begin to develop then the first mode of mindfulness, which is single-pointed mindfulness. And so again, just recapping what Dujam Lingpa has to say about this, and this is at the very top of that table. According to the teachings, there are 4 types of mindfulness of the essential nature of the path. The first entails distinguishing between stillness and movement. And by the power of familiarizing yourself with their different appearances, there is single-pointed mindfulness of the unification of the two. And again, every time I read this, it is just so startling to me that this is really the whole of the practice, right there, taking you from being an absolute beginner all the way up to level 8 of the 9 levels of Shamata. So you are developing single-pointedness with only these 2 basic skills. So you really know what to focus on. It is, first of all, knowing the difference between the stillness of your awareness and the movement of appearances, knowing the difference, and then having a unified experience of stillness and motion. And so you can see that even though that is so simple in the instruction, it can't be easy if it takes that long on the path to really perfect the single pointedness. And then, while resting without strenuously observing them, like before. And so he's letting us know that there's going to be some effort involved in the beginning, trying to maintain. And what is it that is the effort involved? It's going to be, the effort is going to be involved in, not in producing movement. There's no effort in that required at all. The effort is going to be involved in trying to maintain the stillness of your awareness, rather than having an ordinary relationship with this movement in which as soon as awareness illuminates the movement of a mental appearance, what typically happens would be that the space of the mind collapses to the size of that appearance, that mental appearance. Let's just call it an emotional experience. So an emotional memory arises, and rather than recognizing that this is just a mental appearance arising within the space of the mind, within the vast, boundless expanse of the space of the mind, the awareness collapses to the size of this, and then awareness so this becomes attention, then engages with the mental object, and then the stillness of your awareness is set in motion as you go wandering with this emotional experience, and all kinds of leading to a whole train of associations and other memories, other thoughts, other emotional upheavals, mental afflictions may arise. So the challenge and the effort involved in the beginning is to maintain the stillness of awareness. And as I mentioned yesterday, there is a continuum or a sliding scale of stillness and movement over here. Or I shouldn't put it that way. Should be better say stillness over here and interest in mental appearances over here, and engagement with mental appearances over on this side. And so on this end of awareness with no appearances, there is no interest at all in mental appearances. And we do our best to note these appearances as soon as they arise so that they don't fully form. And this would also be, similar to breath meditation, where we think of the mental appearances that arise as distractions. And so we have a preference, an intention, actually, that there be no mental appearances. So this would be awareness of awareness over on this end of the continuum. And then on this end of the continuum is an intense engagement with mental appearances as they arise. And so this would be, over here I think of this end as vipassana practice, because we are really engaged with appearances to the point that we are examining their ultimate nature. And then somewhere in between here on the sliding scale is where we are going to be practicing our Shamata practice. So we are taking an interest in appearances, but not to the point where we are examining or analyzing their nature. What we are only interested in them as simple appearances, but we are taking an interest in them. we are watching them, observing them. So the attitude that we should have about these appearances at this point on the sliding scale is, Dujam Lingpa says, like a herder who is watching his herd of yak on a distant hillside. And so he isn't so engaged with the observing these yak that every time a yak bends down to pick up a blade of grass, that he applauds or goes, yes, I'm so happy that my yak is fattening itself. Or every time that he lifts its tail, oh, watch out. So it's just watching the pattern of the whole herd to see if there are predators coming, for instance, or if one of the baby yak has wandered away from the herd and some action, an antidote needs to be applied. So it's taking an interest, but not such a close examination of the individual appearances. And this is challenging because these are not just yak that we're watching, but these are our most cherished memories. These are our most powerful mental afflictions that are arising. And why is it that people in our contemporary culture medicate themselves with stimulation? Because this is really what a number of psychologists are beginning to describe as this syndrome, new psychological syndromes that are all about anxiety, dealing with ways of dealing with anxiety in our contemporary culture. And we basically are medicating ourselves with stimulation. And with the point being, to the degree that we keep our minds fully occupied and fully distracted, then we aren't going to be aware of disturbing emotional experiences that might arise. And so I think we all have experienced this ourselves, and we see other people doing this, that at some times when they might find themselves in an uncomfortable situation, or some disappointment arises, a bus is late, a train is late, they're going to miss their flight or something, that they immediately take out their cell phone and start playing a game to distract themselves. I've seen this a number of times at airports when people are waiting in line and it looks like the whole system has collapsed or something. And the way that they start dealing with it is just to distract their minds. And so naturally, we come to retreat. There is no stimulation, no conversation of this morning to remember, no news to be indignant about. And so what are we left with then? We're left with just the contents of our mind that arise. And what contents are likely to be arising? It's ones that have some emotional charge to them or some power to them. It's not just at least in the beginning, it's not going to be just a fragment of a memory of a pencil that you saw at the line to go through customs and fill out your customs form or something like that. Because we might have a memory of that. And later in Shamata practice, that might come up, just some fragment of a memory like that. But in the beginning, anyway, while our minds still have a lot of turbulence, the turbulence is all going to be memories, fantasies, thoughts that have a powerful charge with them. What is it that I really have to do when I get back? What is it that disturbed me so much when I left? Who is it that I need to reconcile with? Who is it that I need to tell off? On and on and on like that. Making plans. So whatever is most important and most attractive is going to fill our minds. And so these are going to be difficult to maintain a still awareness watching these, because these are not just yak on a hillside. This is who I am. This is who I identify as being. I identify that I am these thoughts, these emotions, because these are so powerful for me that naturally I feel this is me. This is how I am so different than everybody else. These are my emotions, my memories. They're nobody else's. This is what makes me, me. So these are challenging, not to become fused with, not to become identified with, but just to watch them arise, abide, and dissolve. So let's go back to the Mahasiddha Maitripa one more time. And the Mahasiddha Maitripa said that there are 3 types of quiescence, or Shamata. The first is Shamata that depends on signs, and we talked about that again last night. So signs are some external support that you are really giving your attention to. So signs are really basically used to develop stable attention. And then Shamata focused on conceptualization is the second one. And that is the one that we are going to be practicing with today. And then Shamata that is settled in non-conceptualization. And so this is Shamata without a sign, awareness of awareness, and a practice that we'll be doing this afternoon called merging mind with space. So all of those are there's no object. There is just awareness. But this practice of the 4 modes of mindfulness works with this second one, Shamata focused on conceptualization. And this is the way that Mahasiddha Maitripa describes this. Whatever virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts arise, steadily and non-conceptually observe their nature. And this is so pithy, so compact, so precise, the wording here, that you can, as you progress through your practice, I suggest you just go back, and almost everything in these readings is like this, because all of these are words that have had a real impact on me, but all of these are the words of the greatest masters of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And so these words are going to continually mean different things to you as you begin to have, let's call it an experiential referent, what the words refer to. So your experience is going to all of a sudden begin to inform the meaning of these words. And the words are going to mean something different because now you will have an experience to connect to the words, and your experience is going to be changing continually as you begin to practice. So the important thing here, or this very pithy description, begins with whatever virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts arise. So here he's really referring to what I think of as radical impartiality. Whatever thoughts arise. So in this practice of Dzogchen, it's not like positive psychology or some practices in Sutrayana, where you're trying to cultivate certain thoughts, and you would prefer that you have only virtuous thoughts, and that your thoughts be continually of bodhicitta, that every thought that you have all day long be only of others, or be only virtuous thoughts. So that is not the point here, and certainly not the way that you're going to achieve shamatha. It is whatever virtuous and non-virtuous thought arises. So you don't prefer virtuous thoughts over non-virtuous thoughts. This is very, very challenging because we instinctively prefer happy thoughts to unhappy thoughts. And we can think that the whole point of our life, and the whole point certainly of Dharma practice, is just that we have nothing but happy thoughts all day long for the rest of our lives. And then I will have succeeded at Dharma. But that is not the point. Because, well, we'll talk more about why that's the point. But of one taste, that there you reach having unpleasant and unpleasant thoughts and seeing the emptiness of their nature forces you to realize and allows you to realize that they are of one taste. They have the same nature. Happy thoughts and unhappy thoughts have the same nature. They all are equally pure. And so there is no reason, because they are equally pure, to prefer virtuous thoughts over non-virtuous thoughts, or even the very radical idea there is no reason to prefer nirvana over samsara. This is a startling thought for most Buddhists to comprehend. So he says, whatever virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts arise, steadily and non-conceptually observe their nature. So without any preference for these, what type of thought arises, you steadily, so steadily means with stillness, and non-conceptually, meaning that you are resting in substrate consciousness because it is beyond conceptuality. You observe, and here it gets takes us beginning into Vipassana territory. He says you observe their nature. And we will go into, so we'll just leave it at that for right now. But this will be what we go into beginning tomorrow already. We'll be introducing the fusion of Shamata and Vipassana. And this is where this whole method of Dujam Lingpa becomes, you just appreciate its elegance and its beauty and its genius. Because Vipassana and Shamata become entangled. And you do exactly what Mahasiddha Maitripa is saying here to do. You are steadily and non-conceptually observing all of these powerful mental experiences that I identify as being me, and you observe their nature. And we'll talk about their nature when we get to the Vipassana practice. But this is still all part of Shamatha practice. And then he continues. And the one other element here that is of interest, it is non-conceptually observe their nature. So this is something that Gyaltro Rinpoche says, this may sound paradoxical, but it is possible to rest in non-conceptuality and observe the operation of the conceptual mind. So this is exactly what we are doing when we are resting upstream in substrate consciousness and watching all of the activity of the mind, of the conceptual, configured mind, from outside the mind. And of course you can't do this if your point of view, which is sliding, your point of view can slide from pristine awareness at the top all the way to the very bottom to reification, where you are just being taken in by the delusion of appearances and believing that all of these appearances are truly existent, independent of me. So there is this sliding scale of mentation, then substrate consciousness. Your point of view can change, and your view of reality that is revealed from this perspective of your point of view is going to change. Reality looks different from each point on that sliding scale that your point of view can take. So what we are trying to do is view the mind and all the activity of the mind, not from within the mind, but from outside the mind. So this is the metaphor of the herder watching his yak. So the yak would be the activities of the configured mind, mentation, mental consciousness, watching it from outside the mind. That is, from upstream, the point of view of substrate consciousness. And then if we're able to do that, Mahasiddha Maitripa continues, by so doing, all of these appearances, all the virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts, are calmed in non-grasping. Awareness vividly arises, clear and empty, with no object of grasping, and it is sustained in the nature of self-liberation, in which it recognizes itself. Here, again, what's amazing is that he is describing this, he's calling this a Shamata practice. But clearly what he's talking about here, what he's describing, especially in these last lines, is vipassana practice that actually leads to cutting through, to pristine awareness, in which awareness recognizes itself. So this is the power of this approach to Shamata practice. That this is, while you are actually doing Shamata practice, you can begin to have very powerful realizations and glimpses of not only the nature of appearances that are arising to you, to this still awareness, but you begin to have spontaneous realizations of the nature of the awareness that is perceiving these appearances. And all doing this as Shamata practice. And then, he continues, again, direct the mind to whatever thoughts arise, and without acceptance or rejection, you will recognize your own nature. Again, this is Shamata practice with a flavor of vipassana that can lead to these spontaneous realizations that are right on the edge of cutting through to pristine awareness, actually while you are doing Shamata practice. So you can see that as you proceed along this path of Shamata, using this approach, that when you actually achieve Shamata, most of the work is already done, and that everything else then follows very, very quickly. Karma Chagme says in Spacious Path to Freedom that when you achieve Shamata, that all of the other realizations just fall like dominoes very quickly. Like, for instance, the direct perception of emptiness, which is a holy grail for many practitioners, can happen within a week or a month after achieving Shamata. And as many commentators, including Asanga and Lama Tsongkhapa, say that without Shamata, any realization that you have of insight, of emptiness, is only going to be an approximation. Because the true experience of emptiness requires the mental and physical pliancy of Shamata. And without that, it remains, even though it's a very high realization, without Shamata, it remains conceptual. So an approximation. So this is just, part of the reason for developing Shamata in the first place with any system. But then this system makes it all very, very fast. This is the quick path. So the practice begins with distinguishing stillness from motion. So you have to first of all know the difference, and hopefully the practice yesterday perhaps acquainted you with what stillness of awareness really feels like. And you can, of course, continue to do that practice, and your experience of stillness will become just more and more profound as you wear out cushions. And then what becomes very evident to you is that the experience of movement is very different than this stillness. And so the one way that you can really experience this is, first of all, to recognize your awareness as spacious. And so it is, we will be doing this practice this afternoon, merging mind with space, in which we really expand our awareness into space. And it is unbounded, it has no center, no periphery, no shape, no color, no form. It is coextensive with space. Your awareness is. Awareness does not arise in space. It is coextensive, has the same extent, the same dimension as space does, meaning no boundaries. And so if you can rest in that stillness of space, then the movement arises within that space. And just as like a bird flying across the sky doesn't change the sky, the mental appearances or the movement that arises within this space doesn't change the space. It doesn't set the still space into motion simply by movement appearing within the space. So that is what we are trying to maintain. First of all, you have to have this sense of expansive awareness. And then you recognize movement arising within that expansive awareness. And the quintessential instruction for maintaining the stillness of your awareness is to not be distracted by objective appearances and not be identified with subjective appearances. So these are two different types of appearances that are going to arise within your mind. So the objective appearances would be all of the thoughts, dreams, memories, fantasies, all of these things that seem to be appearing to consciousness. So it seems like when I'm resting in a dualistic state of mind, it seems like the subject is over here, the object is over there, and even though these are appearances of the mind, it still appears as if these thoughts, memories, are somehow other than the awareness itself, and these are appearing to awareness. And so with these objective appearances, the key is not to be distracted by them. And so distraction means that the still awareness collapses. So the expansive awareness collapses to the size of the appearance, to the emotional experience, the memory, etc. And then, because it has lost the whole context of this is only an appearance arising within space, this is the only thing that exists in that moment then, is just this memory, this thought. And then that just leads to going wandering. It's like non-lucid dreaming. So the key is to maintaining stillness is not to be distracted, to, as Mahasiddha Maitripa said, whatever virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts, view them with non-conceptuality, the non-conceptuality of expansive, spacious awareness. And then they will self-release. So if we are able to watch them without grasping to them, then we don't have to do anything about them. So this is the really powerful and very empowering realization that when thoughts that are very troubling arise, because we all have fears, we all have memories of shame or something that is really disturbing to us. And when these arise, we would prefer that they weren't there. We would just wish that this memory, painful memory, never came back again. And wouldn't that be, for me, the definition of healing? That I just have forgotten that. Well, it's not. So whatever thought arises, you have to just let it be. And what you realize then is if you don't grasp to it, it self-releases. And the grasping to it, the pushing it away, the resisting it, is what actually keeps it around and replants the karmic seed, so even if it leaves right now, it's going to be back again tomorrow or later in the day. So the only way of actually becoming free from these troubling thoughts is just to let them be. You let them arise, and you don't even prefer that they wouldn't be there. You don't prefer that they never show up again. You just witness them as yak on the hillside. And when you do that, then these fearful memories that you have been resisting so long, all of a sudden you watch them. They're present. You just watch them intently with curiosity, and you notice that they have a built-in life expectancy. You notice that they arise, they are present for some time, and then they self-release. They dissolve back into the space of the mind. And there's nothing that you have to do about them. You don't have to release them. They self-release. It's built into their nature. And so one element of the nature of these appearances that you discover, as Maitreya said, when you are resting, watching these appearances, he says you discover their nature. One element that you discover is that they are impermanent, that they have a very brief life, actually. And as His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, the conceptual mind is not self-sustaining. And all of these appearances of the conceptual mind are not self-sustaining. It takes the engagement of mental consciousness to keep them around, to put them on artificial life support. And one of the things that is first of all going to keep them around is liking or disliking them, having a feeling response about them. And then letting that feeling response become elaborated into grasping, it's a very pleasant, craving this thing, wishing it to stay around, or that an aversion for it, rejection of it. So whatever thoughts arise, virtuous or non-virtuous, let them be, and they will go by themselves. They self-release. So this is the object of appearances. Don't be distracted by them. View them from this non-conceptual mind and watch them self-release. But there are also subjective appearances. So these are impulses that seem to be a filter that basically color the perception itself. So this is, for instance, a perception of I am feeling tired right now. So if I am feeling tired, it feels like awareness itself is tired. Or I am angry. So if I am angry, it's not that anger is arising as an appearance out there, but my own awareness, am angry. And any time that I say I am, then that we're talking about a subjective appearance, because it is an appearance of I. And so these are the ones that are more difficult to spot. Objective appearances are easier because it appears like they are other. They're out there. But the one who is viewing, the awareness that is viewing, what does that look like? Awareness is behind the camera. Everything else is out in front of the camera. So awareness, you have to actually really make a special effort to look at it in order to find it. And the qualities of awareness. So the point of all of these subjective appearances that arise, in order to maintain the stillness of your awareness, is don't become identified with them. Meaning, don't think this is me, that this is just who I am, or that this is what my mind is, but view those subjective appearances for what they are. Those are just mental appearances as well. So again, what you are doing is watching these subjective appearances, which are still arising only as moments of mental consciousness within the configured mind. You watch them from outside the mind, and then these also become just yak on the hillside that you are watching from the distance, non-conceptually. So that is the way to maintain the stillness of your awareness. There was a question last night, about how to maintain awareness of awareness. And that was basically, how do you maintain the stillness of your awareness? Because if awareness goes in motion with an object, then you have lost awareness of awareness. But these are the two main points. Don't become distracted by objective appearances, and don't identify with subjective appearances. So with this view, you begin to experience and really comprehend this slogan that you hear over and over again in Dzogchen practice. The appearance is never the problem. So whatever arises, it is not a problem. The problem is our relationship to that appearance. And the relationship that we want to avoid is grasping to it. So, and this is our typical habitual response, meaning that when an appearance arises, if it's a pleasant appearance, we grasp onto it to keep it close. And if it is an unpleasant appearance, we grasp onto it by pushing it away. But either way, we are keeping them around. So there is what I think of, and this comes from the practice of non-meditation later after we rest in pristine awareness. But this is a facsimile of one taste, of recognizing that all appearances are equally pure, and so there's no reason to prefer one appearance over another. And this is what I call radical impartiality. You don't prefer happy appearances over unhappy appearances. You just let them be. And this is captured in a Tibetan aphorism that says, "Let your awareness be a gracious host, welcoming unruly guests." And this is really captured wonderfully in this poem by Rumi that is in your handout. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. even if they are a crowd of sorrows, who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So all of these appearances that come to the door knocking, you don't have to worry about inviting them in, because they're going to leave by themselves. You don't have to kick them out of the house if they become too unruly. If you don't grasp to them, all of these thoughts with radical impartiality just dissolve back into the space of the mind. And so this is something for you to watch. Because if you are really resting in still awareness, watching mental appearances arise from outside the mind, you will watch the entire life cycle of a mental appearance. So normally, we only become aware of mental appearances after they are present, because we are enmeshed in the mind, and then they Shanghai us, or they abduct us, kidnap us, and then they take us wandering. So we are only ever really, and then because they take us wandering, we never see this thought dissolve again. We only ever see its presence, and then we immediately become fused with it. This is our ordinary experience of mental appearances as they arise in our mind. But if we are able to maintain that stillness of awareness, watching appearances arise in the mind, we see the entire life cycle. We see them as they arise. In the instant that they arise, we become aware of them. Then we are fully present with them for the entire length of time that they're there. And this is for you to discover with your own scientific research, your own empirical research observing your own mind. How long do these thoughts last? How long? We have a fear that if this thought of that makes me fearful, a bad memory, maybe even trauma, that if I let it in, it's going to last forever. I'm not going to be able to get rid of it. But is that true? You can experiment yourself and just watch. How long do these thoughts, even the most unpleasant or the most pleasant, last if you don't put them on artificial life support? I'll just say brief. And you figure out how long that is. And then you watch them dissolve. And where do they dissolve? Back into the space of the mind from which they arose. And we do this all by just allowing thoughts to arise without trying to suppress thoughts, without trying to restrict them. This is really well expressed in a citation from the Tantra of the Blazing Clear Expanse of the Dakinis, which again is found in Spacious Path to Freedom. All adventitious arising of ideation. So basically, all of this mental thoughts that arise based on causes and conditions is all that means. All of these thoughts are the display of awareness. So there's no need to block it. While conceptualization arises, non-conceptuality grows. While suffering arises, bliss increases. The greater the mental afflictions, the mightier the primordial wisdom. Rest as the knots of the snake suddenly release. Rest as if you were casting off a human corpse. Rest as if you were discarding a foul odor. If it is restrained, this will be a cause of its dispersing again. If it is rejected, this will be a cause of its returning again. If you clamp down on it, this will be a cause of its rebounding. If you subdue it, this will be a cause of its getting tough again. If you burn it, this will be a cause of its icing over. Stop blocking and affirming, and rest in equality. So there is nothing to do with these appearances except to not grasp to them. Let them be. There is no reason to prefer any appearance over another. And when we are able to do that, then, we are able to really begin to develop, at this stage of our experience already, the experience of a Buddha, who is resting in non-abiding nirvana. So you wonder what the experience of a Buddha is like? You can get a taste of it. You know, it's going to be much different, of course, when you achieve your Buddhahood. But you can begin to get a taste of it. And then you take basically the experience of a Buddha, the fruit of the path, as the path itself. So, non-abiding nirvana, we are resting in the nirvana of peace, of still, spacious awareness. While we are all of samsara, the appearances of samsara, are arising. And so we have the knowledge of samsara, all of these appearances, but our nirvana is not disturbed by them. So we have the non-abiding nirvana of a Buddha, our facsimile, our approximation of it. And this then is basically your whole practice until you achieve the real full awakening of a Buddha. And this, frankly, is one of the reasons that I am so drawn to this path. It is so simple, so elegant, so coherent. Everything that you develop as a practice now is leading you to the ultimate goal and is already an expression of what you're going to experience at this ultimate goal. So let's take a break and come back at 10:32, and we will do that practice of non-abiding nirvana, simultaneous stillness and motion. Begin by settling the body in its natural state. Release on the exhalation, tension, constrictions, anything that is obstructing deep relaxation. And also release on the exhalation all the conceptualizations of my tension, my constriction, my body. Continue to relax more and more deeply. With each exhalation, while you maintain the clarity that you begin your meditation with. And discover the natural state of speech. Giving up all control of the breath and settling in a contented, effortless silence. And on the basis of this deep relaxation and silence, settle the mind in its natural state. This is the luminous, knowing nature of the mind. That is able to know appearances without becoming them. Recognize this awareness as stillness. and experience it as spaciousness. And as you rest in this still awareness, there will naturally be appearances arising. Now, for this practice, the appearances that we take special interest in are mental appearances rather than sensory appearances. The object of mindfulness of this practice is the space of the mind and the appearances that arise within that space. And so if there are no appearances, you still have something to be mindfully engaged with. The still awareness itself. So whatever virtuous or non-virtuous thoughts arise, watch them from this non-conceptual stillness, without engaging with them, without becoming fused with them, without your still awareness being set in motion. First of all, recognize them as motion. And know the difference between this motion and the stillness of awareness. If you are able to maintain the stillness of your awareness, witnessing these appearances without grasping to them, you will be able to watch the entire life cycle of a mental appearance. You will see it as in the instant it arises. And without grasping to it, be present with it for as long as it's there. And without doing anything about it, it will release and dissolve back into the space of the mind from which it arose. First of all, recognize the difference between stillness and motion. The stillness of your awareness and the movement of mental appearances. After you are familiar with this difference between the stillness of awareness and the movement of appearances, then cultivate a simultaneous experience of stillness and motion. By maintaining an awareness of the expansive nature, expansive space of awareness, and view these moving appearances as arising within that space, all within a single view. The key to maintaining the stillness of awareness is radical impartiality. Don't prefer one appearance over another. They are all just mental appearances. If your still awareness has been set in motion and gone wandering with one of these appearances, as soon as you recognize that you have been wandering, release your grasp on the distracting appearance. Rejoice, I am lucid again. And feel the difference between this moment of lucidity and the non-lucid dream that you were in while wandering. And then return to that still, spacious awareness that recognizes the difference between stillness and movement.